Hi everybody, welcome back to the class. In this video, I'm going to introduce to you the structure and the language features of argumentative essays, or simply argument essays. So far in the course, we have covered a few language features in general that would help you write effective or professional looking academic essays. And we also talked about summary writing, in that you would need these language skills, those of writing complex noun groups for the academic style, nominalization for compact and precise writing, logical amount sentences for coherence within a paragraph, or how you're going to paraphrase the logical relations between sentences. And we also talked about dealing with sources, why we are doing citations, and how we are doing it for different functions or different purposes of different forms of citations. So this week's agenda will be, again, introducing the nature of argument essays, and we're going to understand the nature of, or the structure of, the model argument essay, as well as deconstructing the model essay to look at the language features that characterize the essay. So just a way to show off what I know about the different names for the two types of argument essays. So for the one-sided argumentation, for example, you are for or against challenging a particular idea or an issue, it's called a Tolman model. Or if you are writing a two-sided argumentations, that means you are providing arguments for both sides of the issues. You are writing a Rogerian model, or simply a discussions when both sides are considered. So I don't hope to state the obvious, but when we write argumentative essays, we need, of course, an introduction, the body paragraphs, and of course, wrapping up your essay with a conclusion. But what we are going to put in each part of the essay would be that the introduction would involve a thesis. That means whether you are for or against a debatable issue. Okay, so not all issues are worth debating. So later on, we'll also talk about how we are going to distinguish facts from opinions. Okay, so that means in argumentative essays, you are not going to argue for or against facts, but for opinions. Okay, and then in the body paragraphs or body sections, if you are writing longer essays such as term papers or even your projects, each paragraph or each section will represent one of your arguments. So that means if you have 3 arguments in support of your stance, you are going to give examples, state facts, or suggest your reasoning, okay, in the argument stage. And after that, as you conclude your essay, you would need to restate the thesis. That means you are paraphrasing your arguments and your thesis statement. And perhaps you will also need to close the whole essay with a suggestion, with a final comment, or some recommendations for the authority, for example, or the people who are responsible for making changes. So those would be the recommendations. I'm not trying to stipulate or to fix a particular kind of writing rule for setting up a title, but if we want to observe the idea of concise writing. When you think about setting up a title for your essay, it would be better if you can write it in some sort of a noun phrase. So we have an example here, like the topic, why should sex work not be legalized? Maybe you want to say something in the title that arguments against the legalization of sex work. I know when you read journal articles or other papers, you will find the titles written in a full statement. But it's good that we write concisely, right? So this would be one of the ways that you can write your title concisely. And don't forget to capitalize the content words. That means you put an uppercase for the first letter of each word, except for articles the or prepositions of, so that your readers would know that you are writing a title. And in order to make your writing concise or your title concise, perhaps it's more preferable that you write in a noun phrase and you're not putting questions or statements in a title. Again, you may find lots of examples with questions or statements in paper or article titles, but at this stage, let's master the skill of turning these statements into noun groups. What you can see on this slide is the introduction paragraph of an effective argument essay. So let me quickly read it with you. Here it is. Sex work may be one of the most controversial types of work around the world. Debates of whether it should be legalized or not have occurred over decades. In view of the increasing number of people arrested for illegal employment related to sex in Hong Kong, from the South China Morning Post 2016, despite the freedom of choosing any jobs one wishes, this essay will argue that sex work should not be legalized or regulated, mainly due to its being ineffective in reducing crime, worsening the repression of women, and encouraging felonious cartels. So when you start your article or your essay, it's good to consider why you are writing about this topic. So this topic may be relevant in your city or your region. It is very important, very significant, very relevant, and like in this case, very controversial. So that you can debate, you can argue about it. Okay, and then towards the end of this paragraph, the writer very clearly shows his or her stance. That is, sex work should not be legalized or regulated. So here you will find that the writer did not say, I argue that, or I think that sex work should not be legalized, or in my opinion. Instead, he or she used this essay as the subject to provide the writer's stance towards the topic of the essay. And then you will find the main arguments in a very concise written form, being the three reasons. Okay, is being ineffective in reducing crime in purple, worsening the repression of women in red, and encouraging felonious cartels in blue. So they are written in noun phrases or in gerund phrases. So it's a way of writing consistently in terms of using the parallel structure. For a thesis statement to be more effective, aside from the stance and the arguments, you may also consider writing a counter argument which is in green. So the writer said, despite the freedom of choosing any jobs one wishes. So this represents one side of the argument, and then the writer has some ideas, other ideas instead. So here we have the very effectively written thesis statement in the first paragraph. And here comes the paragraph containing the examples or the arguments or the points supporting the writer's first argument. So you can see at the beginning of the first argument paragraph, it's got the topic sentence parallel to the first argument in the thesis statement. That is, legalizing sex work may possibly increase crimes. So if you go back to the thesis paragraph, the introduction, you will find in the thesis statement the first point having to do with this first argument. And then as you read on, you will find the writer's points that would support the argument. And the point that the writer has used may be facts or maybe opinions from credible sources. So let me read the paragraph with you. Legalizing sex work may possibly increase crimes. One common argument for the legalization of sex work is that it could reduce crime. When this type of work is not legalized, it may indirectly promote violence towards the sex workers, since they are not protected under the law. So you have this sentence or this statement including an opinion. It may indirectly promote violence towards the sex workers, a condition when this type of work is not legalized, and then you have a reason, which is a fact. They are not protected under the law. And then you have another opinion from The Guardian. So not legalizing prostitution may push the sex workers back into the poor working conditions, which may probably favor people who would like to use violence over prostitute. Okay, and then the paragraph goes on with opinions. However, this claim may not be valid. So this is the counter argument against the previous argument provided by different views, point of views. So instead, sex work can be a form of violence against women. So here, the writer uses a statement from a credible source, such as from the article, journal articles, Raymond 2003, and then we have an interpretation. This means that it would indirectly encourage people using violence over the sex worker as sex work is illegal. Crimes such as rape and homicide may occur more frequently. And then don't forget to wrap up the paragraph by summarizing the content. As a result, legalization of sex work may not be effective for reducing crime or to reduce crime. Here, although these statements are not to be proven to be true, what the writer is trying to do is to, through reasoning, want you or try to make you agree with his or her viewpoint. So opinion is something that asking the audience members to agree or disagree. And when it comes to facts, for example, we are looking for evidence that proves that the statement is true, is factual. So the second argument paragraph would look very similar to the first argument paragraph, with the topic sentence parallel to the writer's second argument, being another argument against the legalization of prostitution is that it might promote the repression of women by men. Again, it's a piece of opinion by the writer, and the writer is trying to persuade you to agree with him or her with examples or with ideas from other references. So since most of sex workers tend to be female, legalizing sex work may give a misconception that women are inferior than men. And then with a credible source, according to Holt, if sex work is legalized, men may receive a message that women can be seen as commodities and consider sex work as harmless. Okay, as you move on, you can see the paragraph is formed by a chain of arguments that leading you to the final sentence, which is a summary. Therefore, legalization of prostitution may encourage people to repress women. Okay, so it's a line of reasoning with different opinions having the same stance. Of course, you are going to write in the same stance, or maybe you would like to refute the other stances that go against your argument, which is going to be something that we talk about in the next slide. And here we have the third argument paragraph or section that starts with a counter argument. A counter argument means the argument that is different from the writer's own stance. So it reads, it's often argued that sex work is just like other type of work. In this case, you might say some people argued that, right? But as we don't know who the some people are, the best way to describe or to express the counter argument would be using passive voice. It is often argued that, or it is often believed that. Okay, and then the writer may move on to talk more about the counter argument. Okay, so it's not enough just to give the counter argument and refute it right away. So you may want to explain a little bit. So the writer gave some ideas about the counter argument first. So it says people should have the right to choose the job they want to engage in and to make informed decisions about their bodies. According to Wong, 2012, people should have the right to do as they wish, including buying and selling sex. And then you will find in the middle of the paragraph would be the rebuttal of the counter argument by the writer. Is clearly signaled by the clause with the word although. Although there are rights for people to choose the jobs they want to do, legalizing sex work may empower the criminal underworld. Okay, so this is the writer's main argument, in that legalizing sex work does not help with reducing crime. And he or she explains, global human trafficking can be one of the examples. It might encourage people to treat sex workers as commodities, which seems to be inhumane and immoral. Okay, so these are the opinions from the writers. I would say it would be better if the writer can include a couple of sources that support his or her argument. But anyway, the arguments are made, the reasoning is clear, and then the paragraph reaches the conclusion. As a result, sex work should not be treated as other type of work since it may promote underground crimes. So you can see that the concluding sentence is actually a summary of everything you have in the body in the body part of the paragraph. It's not just a repeat of the topic sentence. So pay attention and take notes of this. And of course, the end of the essay would be the conclusion, including a restatement of the thesis statement. Okay, this means a paraphrase or a rephrase of the thesis statement. And you should also reiterate the stance. So the writer said, to conclude, we should realize that legalizing sex work could increase crimes, promote the repression of women by men, and empower gang-run prostitution. Therefore, sex work should not be legalized. So, as I said, maybe you would have to be careful with the use of we, because when you use we, who are you talking about? Is it just you, or you are including the readers, which is not necessary actually. So maybe you can say, to conclude, or based on the arguments above, simply legalizing sex work could increase. Or if you really want to keep should realize, you can say it should be realized that. Use passive voice, because there's no need to mention we in your conclusion. So at the final part of the conclusion statement, as a wrap up of the whole essay, maybe you should give some useful or meaningful insights, such as how you're going to make the changes, or how the situation should be improved. So the writer said, instead, the government and the public should be more aware about the welfare of women and offer any help to them for raising their statuses and avoiding being exploited. So this is the final comment. Maybe you can give a suggestion. Maybe you can give some future predictions about the future trends, or you may give a final opinion towards this topic, whether this is good, or why is it good, or why is it not good. And in this case, you are putting the government under the spotlight. What the government should do is to be aware about women's welfare. Okay, so you are asking somebody to be responsible in this case. After talking about the structure of an argumentative essay and the function of each part of the essay, it would be nice if we can deconstruct the language features characterizing the essay. In the past few weeks, we talked about verbs and nouns that would increase the technical look of your writing. From this week onwards, we are talking about how we are using language for taking a stance, giving evaluation on the topic, and adjust your arguments in terms of different degrees. In week 7, we already talked about citation and quotation as a way to find the sources of external voices supporting your arguments, like your opinions or the stated facts in your essay. And you may also want to adjust the strength of stance using modality. Okay, this is what we are going to talk about in a minute. And then we are also using language to express our attitudes and evaluation, what we think about or how we are valuing, okay, giving values to the topic, whether it's positive or negative. Okay, with the tutorial on in week 7, I'm sure you are familiar with citation methods, including integral citations, the cited sources that are incorporated into the sentence structure, or non-integral citations. That means you simply put the citations inside the brackets and put at the end of the sentence. Okay, that means the cited source is not a part of the sentence structure. And in the previous tutorials, we talked about why you are using different kinds of citations in your text, which is that when you cite your sources integrally, you are foregrounding the source, foregrounding the one who knows about the topic. But instead, if you use non-integral citations, you are trying to background the source, but instead foreground or to front load the important information first. Aside from citations, we can adjust the strength of stance through modality. So you can see the modal verbs such as may and should or will will be used for adjusting or to represent the possibility of the statement, whether the statement holds some truthful facts or how truthful it is or how likely it is going to happen, or it represents the necessity for someone to comply with what you want them to do. Okay, so these are the two main functions of modality. So you will have to use this a lot in argument essays in order to adjust the degrees of possibility and obligation in your text. Then we have the language features for expressing attitude and evaluation of the topic. And these language features would be used for expressing our emotions or the emotive responses of the people that are described in the text. For example, whether you are happy, whether you are sad or not. And you may also want to talk about human behavior or morality. For example, the words in blue in the text. A repression of women, which means people are doing bad things to women, in that it represents bad behavior. As with the phrase felonious cartels. Cartels means a group of criminals. Okay, so these represents bad behavior or bad morality. And you may also use words such as adjectives to describe the quality of things or the ideas and objects, like controversial, which means it's maybe it's slightly negative, and illegal employment, which means it's bad thing, is negative. So basically, expressing attitude and evaluation represents how positively or negatively you are judging something or some people or your emotions. And you can find that in academic writing, we don't use language for describing emotions a lot. At least in this paragraph, we don't see any. Yeah, but I'm not saying that you should never use the red words, the emotive words, especially when you are reporting on your interview data with people who are reflecting on their satisfaction or their happiness towards something or a particular topic. You may want to faithfully describe their emotions. But I was just saying that when you are giving your evaluation towards a topic, you should refrain yourselves from basing your judgment on your own emotions. It's not that I feel like it. I feel I want to do it. I'm interested in doing it. So I do this topic. But it's because the topic is essential, is relevant, is important, or in this case, controversial. Okay, so you can see I have used words, in particular adjectives, to describe the phenomena, ideas, and objects in a positive or negative light. So far in this tutorial, we talked about the structure and a general overview of the language features that we can use for argumentative essays. Starting from next week, I'll start talking about stance, how you are expressing your stance. First, I'll talk about what stance and positioning is, and then we'll talk about expressing stance mainly through modality. Okay, and in terms of modality, there are different types of expressions that you can choose in order to avoid expressing your views subjectively. Okay, so we'll also include some exercises that ask you to rewrite sentences that contain subjective expressions. Alright, so that's all from me. If you've got any questions, you can drop me a message or you would want to comment in the comment section below this video. Okay, so enjoy your weekend. Take care.